And now for our last featured project. Yes?
Okay,
Eugenia?
now is that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the Heritage Organization of Romanian Americans in Minnesota was founded 10 years ago. We recently celebrated a decade of activity, and we've been since its inception very small, but very passionate and very excited, and you know, with lofty ideas organization. So one of our projects involving the legacy, building a legacy of the Romanian community in the United States has been documenting Romanian immigration. And that started in 2012. We could not have done anything without a lot of help from a lot of organizations and individuals who generously contributed their time, their ideas, and of course their money. So we are pretty fortunate here in Minnesota to have a legacy grant that comes from Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage, and we applied 4 times, so 4 different grants to accomplish this project of documenting the immigration, Romanian immigration in Minnesota. And of course, our efforts as an organization to do some fundraising. So overall, with the 4 different grants and our fundraising, we have raised about over $100,000. Making documentary movies about immigration is not an easy task, and it involves a lot of efforts, both financially, time-consuming, a lot of work. We had great collaborators in the sister organization, Romanian Genealogy Society, also the local historical society, and the Immigration Research Center at the University of Minnesota. And of course, the 2 television networks that we collaborated with, Town Square Television and the Twin Cities Public Television, the PBS, the local PBS. And like I said, lots of individuals who have come together to bring this project to life. There were several projects, phases of the projects. In order to get to a movie, to release a movie, it takes first a lot of work around interviewing, documenting, archiving the oral histories. And we were fortunate enough to have lots of volunteers. Not everybody is willing to be on camera, and of course we're not actors, you know. So it was plus the times, you know, that the people were asked to relive through their accounts were, you know, quite often traumatic, so we were able to collect, to interview members of the community and collect and archive unique stories that are now available. They have been documented and archived at the historical societies in St. Paul, and they are available for generations to come. you know, for researchers, from historians, and for educational purposes, anyone interested, they are a great resource. The second phase was the documentaries. So the first phase was interviewing, then a documentary movie, then another round of interviewing, then the second documentary. So we are proud to have created at this point the first two documentaries of a trilogy. That was the initial plan. And the first one was called $1,000 and Back, and the second one, Through the Iron Curtain from Romania. And I will address them each specifically in the next slides. And the third phase was, okay, we have the movie, so now what? Well, there's a lot of work around promoting, advertising. We had big events to launch the premiere of the films with really high attendance. The second one was 300 people who came at the American Swedish Institute, where we launched it, and with dignitaries from the Romanian consulate in Chicago and embassy and local dignitaries. So we made sure that there were newspaper articles. So we wanted everybody to be aware of these documentaries, and we made sure that we promoted them across the, you know, locally across the United States and in Romania as well. So like I said, it started with the idea of a trilogy in 2012. The first documentary focused on the early immigration that started at the turn of the century, and it focused on the immigration in St. Paul, because that's where we're from, and that was the research that we conducted and we had access to. The second one was about immigration during the communist era, and like I said, this time, as we lived it and as we know, it was a very sensitive topic for a lot of our community members, and but we were fortunate enough and grateful that some of them jumped to the occasion to really talk about it. And the third one is still a work in progress. It will address immigration after 1989 with its different purpose, right? Many Romanians like us come for, you know, education with job offers, so it addresses a very different population of immigrants. So the first one, like I said, addressed immigration, the story of early Romanian immigration to the communities in St. Paul, starting with the beginning of 1900s until World War II. And we had 12 audio and video recordings that were done in 2013 by HORA and RGS, Romanian Genealogy Society. And like I said, they have been archived and they can be accessed by anyone interested. And then the documentary was completed at Town Square Television in 2014. And in 2015, we were very proud to be nominated and to receive a Regional Documentary Emmy Award. Without further ado, I would like to play a trailer, and I hope it works.
And you can also share and make this available for everybody to watch on their own, which I think it's worth the time.
Okay. Here we go. here.
Romanians began immigrating in large numbers to the United States in the early 1900s.
I imagine it was just to have a better life. You can imagine how adventurous you'd have to be to, at the age of 20, to leave your wife and daughter and come all that way to America.
The commonly held belief is that immigrants to America came here to start a better life. The fact is, many Romanian immigrants came to this land of opportunity with no intentions to stay. Most of the early Romanian immigrants were men with a mission of mie și drumul, or $1,000 and home again.
They weren't particularly excited about existence in Romania in those days. It must have been quite tough. They were happy to come to the United States, make $1,000, and perhaps move back and buy some land.
I'm sure that there were Romanians over here already that he was communicating with, and that told him how the streets were paved with gold.
At the turn of the 20th century, ethnic Romanians were spread across a vast territory that was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Civil unrest and disputes amongst ethnic groups dominated the politics of Austria-Hungary. Conditions were desperate. Phil Tucanita recalled his grandparents were motivated to leave when they sensed that war was approaching.
They immigrated a little later, I would guess somewhere around 1910, 1911. I'm sure it was to dodge the forthcoming First World War.
The decisions for immigrants to leave their families were difficult. There are many heartbreaking stories of families who became separated for years, some of whom were never reunited.
They would separate, and they would remarry only to find out later that they found themselves and there's nothing that they could do about it. Some very, very heartbreaking stories like that had occurred.
Blue-collar jobs were easy to find before the Depression, but the work typically involved hard physical labor.
That's why they settled in South St. Paul, is because of Pacanos. It provided employment, but the Romanian community was here. This is where the Romanians came. They came here in St. Paul, right around Rice Street area.
The railroad industry employed many Romanians and other immigrants in the business of loading and unloading trains and maintaining the tracks and equipment. One of these was Phil Tucanita's grandfather.
He was a painter's helper, and he worked for the railroad, which was very nice. As he called it, the Northern Pacific, and it went to Navy Yard and Iowa, and New York.
South St. Paul Circle, and he's worked in the packing houses. My father quit school when he was 14, and his brother Peter quit school when he was 13. They had to go to work.
That's how they made the money in the stock there. They worked very, very hard.
He was in World War I, got gassed. Back then they had gas masks, but he got gassed and developed TB, and he died in later years. He was 34 years old. He was born in 1900 and he died in 34.
Both planned on going back, and they sent money back to their parents. My brother was born then in 1914. The World War I was on. My half-brother Mihai in Romania was already conscripted into the army at age 16. By the time everything was over and my brother and I being Americanized, my parents realized that one broken home to uproot us and take us to a foreign country was not in the best interest, even if they could afford it, which they still couldn't. It was sad because they always hoped that they could. And it got to the point where there was no one there anymore.
Okay.
Thank you for leaving us on that beautiful note, we commend you, we applaud you for what you have achieved. It is a blueprint for what other communities in other states could do. and that is why we wanted to highlight you as a project of excellence that merits greater awareness, recognition, and replication in our greater community. Thank you so much again.